Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have a lot to discuss. First off, thank you so much to all the new subscribers. I really appreciate it. I know I've had quite a few people join since my episode with Jordan Harper came out, talking all things Alabama basketball. If you have not already seen it, go ahead and check it out. We have an Alabama football episode that we will be discussing here shortly. Got a few things I want to talk about here up at the top, and then we will get right into the episode. First off, as I mentioned, thank you so much to all the new subscribers. But as always, there are about 70% of you guys or 80% of you guys that are not currently subscribed to the channel. So if you do enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. It absolutely does help me out. We're trying to be on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Obviously, we're having a push with all these guests coming on. So any new subscriber absolutely helps me out. As always, if you hear any ads over on the Apple or Spotify, that is because I am partnered with the Believe Podcast Network. We actually have a little bit of a Believe collab coming up here today because my guest is also a member of that Believe Podcast Network. But that podcast network, enables me to be able to do part of what I do today. So anything that you do to help out those advertisers absolutely helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Last thing, if you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, rate, review, share it with a friend, anything like that. Again, I know everybody on YouTube, I know everybody in the podcast space says these things, but the reason we say them is because they absolutely matter. Not trying to be a shill here up at the top, but we have a lot of really, really good Alabama basketball content coming up, so I wanted to just make sure I got all this away because, as I previewed, I have an interview with Stacey Blackwood. If you are not following him, Stacey Blackwood is Blackwood89 over on Twitter. He is a member with he is a writer with Cover Crimson over with Clint Lamb online. It's a forum where you can get a ton of up-to-date recruiting info and in-depth breakdowns. I know Clint's super well known for that. Stacey has a lot of good stuff there as well. He also hosts the podcast Tide Talk Live, and that's the one that's the member with the Believe Podcast Network that I talked about. Me and Stacey came on. We talked about a lot of stuff. It was a really, really fun interview. I know we have a couple of commits that we talked about. We talked about those as well as all the recruiting things that you need to be aware of. So if you are interested in that, stay in touch because here we have the episode with Stacey Blackwood. And we are joined today by Stacey Blackwood at Blackwood89 over on Twitter from Cover Crimson and Tide Talk Live, as I mentioned. Thank you so much for joining the show today, Stacey.
Absolutely, man. Proud to be here.
Thank you so much. We're going to be talking some Alabama football. Obviously, we're in the heat of recruiting season. There's a lot of recruiting stuff going on. We will talk about some guys that have recently committed as well as some others that some Alabama fans need to be on the lookout for. But want to just first start by asking kind of the question around what do you think that Alabama has done positively on this side of the note, right? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk around the new house settlement. I know Courtney Morgan getting the extension. I know he's had a huge hand to play in all this. But what do you think that Alabama's done successful, either with these top recruits or just overall this summer?
I think if you had to kind of give a general statement of what this coaching staff and Courtney Morgan have done, it's just the way they evaluate the players and who they want to sign. I know there's some fans that are a little upset about the number of 3 stars that have committed recently and others that are projected to be a part of this class as well. But you mentioned the house settlement, and this is going to affect how many 4- and 5-star players you can afford to have in each of your classes. And you also have to afford players in the transfer portal as well. So I think evaluating and identifying talent that are not just 4- and 5-star guys, and you look at those guys and kind of you watch their tape and watch their film, and you say, hey, I can see where this guy could fit into this Alabama's offense, whether or this scheme, whether it's offensively or defensively. So I think this coaching staff and Courtney Morgan especially, his ability to evaluate and identify talent that fits what Alabama wants to do, that's what sticks out to me the most. And I think Alabama fans should just kind of not stress so much over star rankings. Star rankings are important, yes, but go and look. If I had to give some advice to fans as far as recruiting goes, go look at who Alabama is beating for these 3-star guys. That's going to tell you more about what type of player that is, more than what the ranking would.
Yeah, and when you're talking about that, so would you just consider this a situation where Alabama's looking more for fit than they are just overall, in theory, raw talent? Because at the end of the day, for anybody unaware with how recruiting kind of works, recruiting is just a star ranking that says is this person likely to be like an all-pro style player, right? Like a 5-star should be a can't-miss prospect, but that doesn't mean they're a can't-miss prospect for your system. It means they're a can't-miss prospect for somebody's system.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, and not so much uh obviously the fit is important, but there's so many layers to this, especially with the house settlement. Eventually they're going to the 105 player roster, and the walk-ons are not necessarily a thing of the past, but you have to distribute the money, the revenue sharing amongst the roster. So it's just so different now. You can't afford to have nothing but 4 and 5 stars. Nobody can afford that. Not even Texas can afford that. So you have to find the guys that, yes, they're very talented players, but like you mentioned, they have to fit what you want to do offensively, defensively, and as a culture and how you want to build your program.
Yeah. Additionally, with that, something that I've noticed, and especially with a couple of the recruits we're going to talk about here coming up, somebody that is still playing a bit of a role, and I know that some Alabama fans are happy to see, and some are probably like, well, DeBoer can't recruit without him, but we have to say it. Nick Saban obviously was on some of the visits with Xavier Crowell and Tank Jones and some others. What have you heard or kind of thought about his development in this process, his how much he's been involved? I know obviously Morgan and DeBoer and such are taking the lead, but what kind of role has Nick Saban played so far in this?
Well, I think context here matters, and anybody who's on social media understands that one reason Nick Saban was there on Saturday for this last official visit weekend was because Coach DeBoer and a lot of members of his staff were in Mississippi for Keelan Russell's sister's funeral. So, and Nick Saban had to be in town anyway. He had some Nick's Kids Foundation stuff to take care of, so he had some reasons to be there, and also Nick still loves Alabama. I mean, I think that's evident, and it really wasn't so much a recruiting pitch of, hey, this is why you should come here. What I was able to gather was Nick Saban was more of like, hey, this is why I love Alabama. This is why we were successful here. This is why I think Coach DeBoer is going to continue the success here at Alabama. So I'm excited that Nick Saban is still around and loves the University of Alabama, and that he believes in this coaching staff enough to kind of stick his neck out, so to speak, for what Coach DeBoer and his staff are building in Tuscaloosa, because it is different. It's a different era. I mean, the truth is, it's a different era from a recruiting standpoint from what Nick Saban was recruiting in, because we're almost in the obviously NIL is still going to play a factor, but it's almost the post NIL era now with the revenue sharing because of the house settlement. So Coach Saban still being around is awesome to me, because it shows that he still cares about the university, cares about the future of the program, and he obviously wants to stick around. And I don't know if you saw some of the pictures or not. It wasn't like he was in Coach DeBoer's office trying to sell these recruits. He was in his office, which is not even at the actual football facility where the other coach's office at. It's inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. So it's not like he was overriding Kalen DeBoer inside his office, trying to sway these kids. It was more about Coach Sabin letting those guys know about the experience he had at Alabama, and why he was able to build a successful program, and why he thinks Coach DeBoer can continue that.
And I also read, and you can feel free to speak to this, but also the people that you saw Saban in some photos with were some guys that were in-state recruits that Saban had been talking to, in some cases prior to leaving Alabama, right?
Correct.
Famously, Saban had interviewed coaches the day that he retired. Saban was, of course, recruiting till the day he retired as well. So these are guys that, probably at least had some level of relationship with Nick Saban. Maybe not, as much as some others, obviously that were on the team, but these are some in-state guys that I'm sure Saban was on early. With them being 5-stars, you have to be on these guys very early. And I'm sure they had been to camps being in-state guys. These are not people that Saban, was just completely unaware of. Obviously, the piece you talked about with Keelan's sister played a huge role in this. But this isn't just Saban, trying to throw his name in the hat against somebody that he doesn't know. Like, these are players that he knew.
Yeah, he had previous relationships, especially with somebody like Tank Jones. Coach Saban offered him, I think, 2 years ago now or so. Obviously, Sadarian Morgan knew Coach Saban from camps and stuff like that. I'm not sure if Saban ever actually offered Sadarian Morgan a scholarship at Alabama, but he obviously had a relationship with him. Now, Crowell's a little different because he did reclassify, so he's a year younger than what Tank Jones and Sadarian Morgan are. But obviously, he growing up in the state of Alabama, he has to admire Coach Sabin. It's just kind of a thing if you live in this state. So, yeah, that was obviously a big piece of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've talked a little bit about two of the guys that have committed. I want to get into both of those. First things first, Alabama gets the commitment from Xavier Crowell. This is a guy that was trending toward Alabama a ton. It seemed like at the last second, either Texas fans or media or somebody tried to play some sort of devil's advocate and saying that he may go to Texas, but indeed Alabama does lock it down and secures the commitment.
Yeah, and I'll say this: Texas is going to be involved because they got the money. So we I don't think anybody should just brush that off as if it was nothing. But I do think there was a little extra spun on it than what needed to be. So yeah, but what a massive commitment for Coach DeBoer and his staff. All the talk last year was about the in-state recruiting and how Coach Freeze, kind of dominated the state of Alabama. And look, not all recruiting cycles are created equal. The state of Alabama obviously always has good players, but the top end of the class of 2026 is just incredibly loaded. And the fact that EJ Crowell is now a part of this class is huge for Coach DeBoer. And I think if you look in terms of fit of what Crowell means for this offense, I mean, when I watch him play, first of all, the fact that he's reclassified, he's going into his senior year, but he should be a junior. The dude looks like he's 21 years old already. He's completely jacked. I mean, he looks like a grown man, even though he's still a high school kid. But you watch him run. He runs angry. He runs powerful. He has great speed, burst, everything you look for in a back he has. Now, I'm not sure about the pass catching abilities or the pass protection ability because you don't really see that in a high school level running back. But the fact that the way he runs, it reminds me so much, almost a mix. And I'm not saying he's going to be either one of these guys. Don't get me wrong, but he reminds me of a Bijan Robinson or a Saquon Barkley. The build, the stature, the way he runs with power and the quick burst, and the way he can just kind of make people miss with a quick cut, even at his size. This dude is a special talent, and I think it speaks volumes the fact that he reclassified an entire year, much like Ryan Williams, and is still a 5-star prospect, arguably the best player at his position in the country.
And what do you think that the potential impact of like getting a Ryan Grub? Obviously we don't know if Ryan Grub will be here when Crowell gets here. Don't want to count our chickens before they hatch. But what do you think that the impact of a Ryan Grub or a DeBoer system does to a guy like Crowell? Obviously, I think that as a back, the impact of that is huge. But going to a one back system that I fully expect us to be in, a little less two back than we were this last season. What do you think the impact of having somebody like Crowell that's a physical specimen that can handle that workload means?
Yeah, and I want to preface before I go into this, I don't mean any disrespect to any of the running backs that are on Alabama's roster right now, but it's been a while since Alabama has had a talent like EJ Crowell in the backfield. I'm talking about a next level. You watch this dude play, and he's just different. I love Jam Miller. He's a great player. Richard Young's a great player. Daniel Hill is made a lot of noise this spring. I think he's going to be a good player. But I don't look at any of those guys as just complete difference makers at the way I look at EJ Crowell. So yes, you talked about the one back system, and we saw that with Coach Grub and Coach DeBoer in Washington. Johnson was the running back's name they had there the last year they were together. I can't remember his first name. Really good player, had a really good year for Washington as that kind of feature back. And I see that in the future for EJ Crowell. Now, if that's year one, I don't think so. It's possible. But yes, I think in terms of a future one back system in Tuscaloosa, this is the perfect guy for that. A 3-down player who runs hard, runs physical, is really athletic, and I imagine he is going to be more than serviceable as a pass catcher out of the back.
Perfect. Yeah. That's something when you think about, pass catching, like you said, something that people need to understand, when you're recruiting guys similar to when you're talking football, whether you're talking basketball, whatever sport you're talking about, you have to recruit to what they actually can do in high school or what they can be able to do at the next level, not what they're showing in high school. Now,
Yeah.
part of it is seeing what they're showing in high school to think what they extrapolate can do in the future. But if you're not asked to do something, you're not asked to do something.
Right.
Derrick
And it,
Henry was never asked to be a pass blocker.
And that doesn't mean they can't do it either. That's something, just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not possible for them to do it. And Derrick Henry's the perfect example of that. All they did was turn around and hand the ball every time, and they'd have been stupid to do anything different.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, that didn't mean that Derrick Henry couldn't catch the ball. It didn't mean that he couldn't pass protect. It's just that he was never asked to do those things. So that's a great point, and I think that Crowell is more than capable of doing all those things. Now it's probably going to take time, especially the pass protection standpoint. That's always the most difficult transition for a running back coming out of high school. But the dude's built like a tank, and I have a lot of confidence that he'll be ready to play.
Absolutely. Well, the other guy that Alabama gets the commitment from is four-star athlete. I believe Alabama's probably going to play him at tight end in Max Sutter. What do you know about this guy? He's a guy that, for me, wasn't as high on my radar as some of the others. I know, he's obviously a highly ranked guy, but the athletes, for me at least, get a little lost in the shuffle because they don't have the position ranking next to them. So sometimes when I'm kind of looking into this stuff, I don't circle them as quite as often as I do somebody else.
Well, I really like this kid, and I think if you watch the tape on him, you see a guy that's roughly 6'6", around 230. So he's got a massive frame. Gonna probably play around 250 once he gets to playing in Tuscaloosa, at the tight end position. And I think if you line him up as an H to be a pass catcher, you're going to say, wow, this dude's a really good pass catcher. You line him up at the Y to maybe be that inline blocker and be physical. You watch the tape and you're like, man, he can do that too, which is very rare at the high school level at the tight end position. So Max Sutter is a massive get for Alabama. They were looking for that kind of star player at that position in this class. They got a couple guys in the last cycle, in Caleb Edwards and Marshall Pritchett, who I think are going to be good players. But much like Crowell, I think Max Sutter is a difference maker type player. So really good pickup for Alabama. I see him being I don't know, an instant impact guy, because you don't know about the weight and how much he can handle from a physicality standpoint right away. But down the road, this is a really good player who I think could be an impactful guy, both as a pass catcher and as a blocker on the end line. And, it's rare to see those types of guys. You saw Brock Bowers do it for Georgia. I'm not saying he's Brock Bowers, by the way. That dude's just different. But he's a guy who can do both and do them both really well.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, that's something that being able to do both is not something you often see at that tight end
Yeah.
position. Think of the guy, and again, not to talk poorly of the guy who we have on our roster today, but like Jackson Marco, right? Like he came in as just a truly blocking guy. I believe he had one reception when he got here. Like this is not, when you're looking at a tight end position, you're a completely serviceable and even starter being, I don't want to say unable to catch the football, but being not a pass catching tight end. So for him having that ability to play both positions in our system, that's a huge deal when you're looking at like long-term benefits of this guy.
Absolutely. And the way you can look at it is like this season, I expect Danny Lewis to be the more inline guy, blocking, being a physical player, and Josh Cuevas to be that pass catching specialist from that tight end position. So look, you still get the job done. You're just having to do it with two players instead of one. So it's rare to find that tight end that can do both. And I really think down the road, Max Sutter is going to be able to do that and be a really good weapon for Alabama. And what that allows you to do is you can put an extra playmaker out wide beside Ryan Williams, beside, Lotzier Brooks, beside some of those freshman phenoms that are coming through, Derek Meadows, whoever else is coming through. You can put those guys out wide, and you can have that one tight end who's not only you put him in there and you're like, oh, well, he's just blocking. Well, you put Josh Cuevas in, oh, he's just going to be pass catching. You put Max Sutter in down the road, and you're thinking, hey, he's either he can do both. So it just opens up so much for your offense, and it's a rare thing to have. And I look at Max Sutter, and I think, man, by the time he's probably a redshirt sophomore, if he doesn't do it sooner, this guy could be a weapon in this Ryan Grub, Kalen DeBoer offense.
Yeah, that's great news to hear. Obviously, these are the two guys that have committed most recently, but this time of year is right for commitments. Obviously, I know over on your Tide Talk Live Twitter account, you put out some dates that some Alabama fans might want to watch closely. Some others that I wanted to just kind of quickly talk about. Obviously, these guys have not officially committed, but guys that we really think are trending super well towards Alabama in Xavier Griffin, Cedarian Morgan, and Jaira Edwards. What do you think is some of the high points on each of these guys? Obviously, all three of them being high 5-star. This is a kind of a star-studded group that's going to kind of close out close out June and the beginning of July.
Well, much like Crowell, Xavier Griffin is being really pushed by the Texas Longhorns. Now, look, Griffin is a guy, he's from the state of Georgia, but has a lot of family that loves Alabama. So I think Alabama is in good position for him. I'm not a guy who loves to predict where high school kids are going to commit to because they're high school kids. And I know you don't have kids. I have kids. I can't predict what any of my kids are going to do ever. And I know them like the back of my hand. So I'm not going to pretend like I know what some of these kids who I don't even know are going to do because most of the time they don't really know what they're going to do until the last minute. But I think Alabama likes where they sit with Xavier Griffin right now. They really like where they sit with Jai Edwards. The fact that he canceled all his other official visits following his official visit with Alabama, I think says a lot. Excited about him. I think he is a special talent there in the back end of the defense at that safety position. I didn't say this about Xavier Griffin. I love his position versatility. He reminds me a lot of Jahad Campbell, where he can kind of play that off-ball linebacker at inside, maybe that stinger position like Jahad Campbell, but also in pass rushing situations, be out there on the edge and get after the passer as well. So I like his position versatility. Jai Edwards, like I said, is a really good player as well. We got Malachi Lee's announcing on soon as well, but I think that's a Michigan lean. Who was the other guys we're talking about? Sadarian Morgan, yeah. How can we forget him? That dude, obviously, most of the people have RPM'd him for Alabama as well. I think he's committed in July 2nd, coming up here in just a couple days. He would be a massive get for Alabama. If Coach DeBoer can go into the Independence Week with commitments from Crowell and Sadarian Morgan, I think Alabama fans will be feeling a lot better about this recruiting class. And I think it shows once again that we probably should be a little patient in terms of recruiting. But I love Sadarian Morgan. It's rare that you find a guy at 6'4", 220, that can run the way he runs, that has the catch radius that he has, and the ability to win. We call them 50-50 balls. I think with Sadarian Morgan, it's more about a 70-30, 75-25 ball, because this dude just goes up and gets it. And he would be a special addition to this class as well.
So these are some of the guys, obviously, that we know Alabama's super high on, and these are some of the ones that are committing here, through the beginning of July. Are there any other names that you're hearing that Alabama obviously has made good headway with? And by this, I don't exactly mean like every guy that's going to commit. I'm not worried about that. I'm just meaning some names that some Alabama fans might want to just circle and be like, hey, just take a look at this guy. Obviously, he may or may not commit. We'll see, right? Like, he may even have a visit coming up soon. Like, obviously, again, like you said, these are high school kids. The reason why you will never see me nor Stacey telling you who might come is because it changes, like somebody changes underwear, right? Like, I'm not worried about that. Like, I will tell you once they commit, whether it be basketball, whether it be football. But I am not in the business of trying to predict what these kids are going to do. I can tell you what I'm hearing, but I can also tell you that sometimes I hear something different every hour. So yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. A couple guys, I would say Zay Hall, a linebacker from Tuscaloosa, recently received an offer. I guess it's been about a month ago. Was on an official visit this last weekend as well. Measured in roughly 6'3", around 225 at Alabama's camp or on Alabama's visit. They say he runs a legit 4.5 40. So that's a guy. I know he's a lower ranked player. Once again, go look at some of the schools that have offered him, and you'll think, okay, I believe this guy could fit at Alabama. So, excuse me, I really like Zay Hall. I think Alabama's in good position for him as well. Owen Cable, a receiver from the Nashville area, another 3-star guy who is right. I mean, forget the rankings, if I tell you there's a receiver that's 6'3", 190 to 200 pounds, runs a 4.4, 4.5 40, and has a great vertical leap, has really good ball skills, would you take him?
Of course.
Okay, so that's what Owen Cable is. And so forget the rankings, forget all that. I always encourage everyone, anytime I do a recruiting show, just turn on the tape. It's that simple. Everybody's got a huddle tape now, or you can look it up on YouTube. All these guys have film. Go watch them play and say, hey, look, this dude looks like he could play at Alabama, or this dude looks like he could play in the SEC or the Big Ten. And if he can play in the SEC or the Big Ten, then he can play for Alabama. So Owen Cable, Zay Hall. Those are two other guys that I would keep my eye on if I was an Alabama fan.
Cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Want to transition a little bit and wanted to ask, obviously, I know we mentioned Ryan Grubb earlier, but I've talked a little bit about it, but I just want to get another person's kind of impact on what you think he's going to be. Obviously, he has a lot of weapons at his disposal, but what do you think kind of the impact of Ryan Grubb this season is going to be to the offense? Obviously, from some of the things that I've heard, obviously from 2 to 1 back system, I think that may have more to do with the quarterback than it does the offensive coordinator. But, what are your kind of thoughts on, will we see difference in play calling? And again, feel free to mention if you think this is coordinator related or, other related, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll say this: it's easy to blame somebody, and look, Jalen Milroe had his faults. There's no doubt, and I'm not saying Nick Sheridan was the perfect play caller, but when you have a guy who is limited in certain areas, there's only so much you can do as a play caller. And I think the fact that Nick Sheridan stuck around and Coach DeBoer wanted him to stick around tells you all you need to know about Nick Sheridan and what Coach DeBoer thinks of him. So I'll leave that at that. As far as Ryan Grubb goes, I do think there will be some changes. Obviously, he's a more experienced play caller than what Nick Sheridan was. He's a very hard nosed type guy, in your face, which is opposite of what Coach DeBoer is, which is why I think they mesh together so well. And it kind of creates this bond that they have where they just kind of feed off one another. Hey, you go be the bad guy, good cop, I'll be the bad cop, all this type of situation. And I think you'll see a little difference in terms of play calling. Obviously, everything is personnel driven. Ty Simpson, who is the perceived starting quarterback going into the season, is a completely different player than what Jalen Milroe is. He plays on timing, anticipation, rhythm. Jalen Milroe is off script a lot of the time, and so and that's just the way he played. And not that one's better than the other. It's just that when you play off script, you're more prone to mistakes. When you play within the system and timing and rhythm, you're more prone to be more consistent. So I think you'll see an offense that's more consistent because you have a quarterback who has anticipation or who plays with anticipation, who gets in a rhythm as far as his step, his drops, and all those things. But I also think it does make a difference when you have a more experienced play caller like Ryan Grubb, who is very respected. Obviously, he was so respected that he got a shot in the NFL. Actually, did a really good job with the Seahawks and Geno Smith. They had a really good offense this last year in Seattle. But you get him in Tuscaloosa, the familiarity he has with Coach DeBoer and the other coaches on that staff as well. I think you're gonna see a much improved, a much more consistent Alabama offense in 2025.
That's great to hear. Yeah, and this is something that I've talked about with a lot of people, and I agree with you on the whether you want to call them downfalls or whatever, at the end of the day, you won a lot of games with Jalen Milroe. And
Absolutely.
there were games, as I've said it, there were games you probably would have lost had you not had Jalen Milroe. And there were games you probably would have won had you not had Jalen Milroe. It was the good and the bad,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it's unfair to blame it all on Milroe. It really is. It's unfair to blame it all on Milroe because there was so many. The offensive line has not been what it's needed to be. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's fair to point out. We've already talked about how we've lacked that difference maker in the backfield. I mean, Jalen Milroe has been our best running back the last 2 years, and he was trying to play quarterback. So let's be fair to Jalen as well. And I just think it's unfair to blame him for everything, but it's obvious that his limitations affected the offense and its ability to be consistent.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Well, only have 2 more quick ones. One of them, I asked some friends of mine, like, "Hey, I have Stacey coming on. Is there any questions you have?" And one of the questions that got brought up, and it was a good one. Actually very curious about. What do you think that the kind of the staff's thought process around the secondary is as it relates to like Dijon Lee and Cam Calhoun and some of the guys that we have coming in? Obviously, we brought in some really talented 5 stars as well as some transfers. I think that obviously you have Demani Jackson and
Xavier Brown.
Xavier Brown that are going to be your starters, of course. But, what do you think happens at that other position? Obviously, I think there's multiple guys competing for what will be kind of one starting position.
Yeah, golly, that the secondary. I just want to talk about the secondary in general. I'm not sure there is a better or more a deeper secondary than what Alabama has. It is unbelievable. You think about you already talked about Demani Jackson and Xavier Brown. I mean, you could argue that's the best corner duo in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the safety duo of Keon Sabb and Bray Hubbard, arguably the best safety duo in the country. And then you have some guys like a Zay Mincy, Deshaun Jones, who actually, if you go back and watch some of the later parts of the season, played really well at that Husky position for Alabama when Devontae Smith got hurt. You have Dijon Lee, the guy who's like a basketball player out there at 6'4", 6'5", roaming the back end of the defense. You have Cam Calhoun, who's an experienced college player and has a really great PFF rating at Utah last season, who's competing for some playing time as well. And you bring in other talented players. It's unbelievable the depth this secondary has, and the length is what stands out the most. I mean, I think the shortest guy out there is going to be Deshaun Jones at 6 foot, and I'm not sure he holds on to that Husky spot. I mean, what happens if Zay Mincy is too good not to play at 6'3"? What happens if Cam Calhoun's too good not to play? So they have a really good problem of having a lot of good dudes back there in the secondary. So I do like the coaches, and you see it with this recruiting cycle as well. The length they recruit in the back end of the defense shows that they want to make it as tough as possible to fit that ball into the receiver, and I love it. I love guys that can cover, and when you have length at 6'1" or 6'2", or if you're Dijon Lee, that's 6'4", which is just ridiculous for a corner. It makes it tough for those opposing quarterbacks to fit it in there to the receivers. So yes, it's obvious that this coaching staff loves length. They love athleticism in the back end of the defense, and I'm excited about what the secondary can be this season.
For those of you that have followed me as I talk about basketball and how we've been recruiting for defense there, some of these same things are going to sound true, right? The same type of guys that Nate Oates is adding, like length at your position, is
Yes.
exactly what Kalen DeBoer is doing on the defensive backfield side of the field, right? The length, it just there's some things that can't be coached, right? You can coach certain positions and you can coach, physicality. Maybe you can get them in the weight room. Like either you're long or you're not, right? There's nothing I can do. Like that's just a body type archetype thing. And so that's something that I think that a lot of athletics is going to, that people are realizing is when you have somebody that just has superior length, in some cases that makes for better defense, whether it's on the basketball court, whether it's on the football field, it just makes it harder to get around that person. And you're seeing it funny enough, from both coaches right now.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the game. It's always been said that football is a game of inches, and if you're out there in at corner and you're 6'3" or 6'4", and the guy you're covering is only 5'11", you have a distinct advantage over that dude on trying to go after that football. So there's a reason they're going after that length. It's because it makes it difficult to complete passes against you. And when you couple the fact that they not only have great length, but they're extremely athletic. All of them are extremely athletic. I mean, Demani Jackson's one of the most athletic dudes on the team, and regardless of position. And he's 6'1", pushing 200 pounds. I mean, that is a physical dude with great length, great athleticism. So it's just, I don't know. You cannot coach length. And when you have that type of length, and you talk about it on basketball, Herb Jones is a great example of that. The dude just, his arms went on forever. You couldn't get by him. And that's kind of what the coaching staff is doing here on the football team, recruiting that length at the defensive back position.
Gotcha. All right. So the last one, and I asked Nick Kelly, and he gave me some ideas. I want a name on the current roster. So we're not talking recruits this time, but on the current roster that you think is prime for like a breakout season. And I'm not talking obviously somebody that, everybody's going to assume, no Ryan Williams, no, obvious giveaways, but, somebody that you think that's, they can either be under the radar, maybe somebody that started some games but didn't have a huge impact last season. Who is that guy?
Okay, I'll go to the defensive side of the ball, and I'll go on what everybody loves, the defensive line. I'm going to go Jeremiah Beeman. This is a guy who played go back and watch the Michigan game. I know nobody wants to do that, but but he played really well. Alabama lost Damon Payne to the transfer portal, actually to Michigan, before the bowl game. And so Jeremiah Beeman had a lot of reps in that game against the Wolverines, and he played really well. This guy, he come in to Alabama, 6'4", 265 or so. He is up to well over 300 pounds. I think around 310, 312, but is really athletic for his size. And I think he's a guy who could be a, a, a pass rusher from that interior defensive line spot, that nose tackle spot. And Alabama needs some depth there on the interior of the defensive line. Of course, Tim Keenan's back. James Smith is going to be there. You have Edric Hill as well. But I really believe that Jeremiah Beaman could be a guy who splashes this year and kind of creates a lot of noise and maybe doesn't become that super household name this year. But when you get ready for the 2026 season, you're like, hey, this dude is a slam dunk starter, a guy who's going to be impact player and pushing for first or second team all SEC. That's what type of player I think he can be.
That's great to know. Yeah, I definitely will have to go back and watch what I can of the Michigan tapes.
Godspeed.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Stacey. Please tell it. I'm going to roll out the red carpet. Please tell everybody where they can find you at.
Well, I'm at a couple different places. Covercrimson.com. There with Clint Lamb, doing a lot of stuff on our message board there. It's super cheap, less than $10 a month, can get you on the message board, where Clint does a great job of really diving into the nitty gritty of Alabama football and the tape. And he's a grinder, man. And if you follow him on social media, you know that. So we have a lot of good stuff going over at covercrimson.com. Also have Tide Talk Live, which is also a part of the Believe Network here with Owen as well. So just follow. You can see there Blackwood 89, also Tide Talk Live, Cover Crimson. You can find me doing stuff everywhere. I love Alabama, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever it is. I love to talk the Crimson Tide, and if you love that as well, give me a follow.
Thank you so much for letting everybody know. And a little bit of sneak peek for anybody. That guy who he said he's partnered with over at Cover Crimson, you may see him on the show here in the coming weeks or so. Obviously, I wanted to get Stacey on the show. Me and him have been talking for a while, wanted to get this set up. But with recruiting season in full swing, Clint said he might come on the show as well. So, y'all be on the lookout. There's a lot to be subscribed for. Obviously, I know this is a very busy time for Alabama football. Basketball, I know there's a ton of that as well. So as always, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.